I want to talk about how to talk to someone about abortion and specifically how to change their mind, right? You and I, we can debunk the talking points all day long, but if we don't know how to have that conversation, then it means nothing. Like, it's one thing to win an argument, but the art of changing someone's mind is very different than just winning an argument. I wrote a book about it. It's called How to Change Someone's Mind. So I'm the expert on this issue. No, I'm not, but I do have some suggestions and things to talk about, things to think about. First, before you embark on this mind-changing adventure, 3 points. There are different kinds of people, right? If you're talking to this person full of rage, trying to make them pro-life, you are not going to be successful at it. They're full of rage. I'm thinking more about like your coworker or a friend of yours, someone you know, someone who respects you. That's what I'm talking about. Second, you got to consider the place. You're never going to change someone's mind at a political rally outside of the Supreme Court with a bullhorn. Or these people twerking, for instance. Like, that's not the place. People's defenses are too high. They'll never be humble enough to potentially ever change their mind. So just ignore those people for now. Third point, consider who else is around. One of the main reasons why people don't change their mind on anything is because they have to first admit that they were wrong. And no one ever wants to admit that they were wrong on anything, let alone something that's become such an identity issue, right? Like, I am a woman. I must be pro-choice. We're very tribal. We feel safe in our tribe. So the idea of leaving your tribe by now being pro-life, I'm leaving a safe space to an unknown. And to someone who's doing that, potentially doing that, it feels to people like they're betraying themselves, betraying their tribe, and they're voluntarily going out into the jungle to potentially be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger because I'm not going to a safe place that I know. So people go to incredible lengths to never admit that they were wrong because they feel safe where they are. So what do we do with that, right? So if you want to change someone's mind, you got to know who you're talking to, ideally someone you know and who respects you. 2, have a conversation and keep the temperature low. Watch your tone, your body language, watch theirs. As soon as their temperature goes up and they start to get defensive, and you're never going to change their mind in that moment. So keep it low, keep the temperature low. Also realize how hard it is for someone to admit they're wrong on something. Right? That's another reason why it has to be one-on-one. As soon as another person enters the conversation, people are way less likely to ever admit they're wrong. And then it becomes I have to win the argument as opposed to actually listening and potentially changing my mind. Okay. Another point, be patient. You're not going to talk to someone and they're just like fall on their knees like, oh, you are a genius. Oh, thank you for coming into my life and then saving me from myself with my terrible opinions. Oh, you're so my Lord and Savior. No, that's never going to happen. You're planting seeds. That's all you're doing. It's not up for you to save the world in one conversation. So take that pressure off yourself and off that moment. One last thing. The person you're talking to doesn't care what you think. They don't care what your opinion is. And that's hard for us to understand because like, how could they not care what I think? No one cares what you think. People only care what they think, right? We're all selfish. So this person you're talking to, they don't care what you think at all. So don't even bother telling them. They don't care, and as soon as you tell them, then they start getting defensive and they start thinking about their attack back, and it turns into a debate, and that's not what we want. The goal instead is to find out where they formed their opinion and pull their opinion out of them. And that's my main point. If you're talking to someone who's pro-abortion or pro-choice, ask them where they got their opinion on this. Not why they think what they think, but where. And one of 2 things will happen. Either they will have this big dramatic story to share, or they have no idea where they formed this opinion. And either way, it's good, right? So if they have this big dramatic story, well, great, we can talk about it. If they have no idea, which is most often the case, then they themselves start to make their own cracks in their oh so precious opinion. Once they realize like, oh, I don't know where I first started thinking, right? That's an initial crack in their foundation. If it's that first person, though, the person who has a profound story, that's great too. Unearth it, right? Sotomayor said that 25% of women, or Breyer, I should say, said that 25% of women had an abortion, which means that, about that many men have been a part of one too. So that's 25 million women, and about 25 million men or so have been a part of an abortion, right? So when you're talking to a a pro-abortion person, they've probably had one. Or their sister had one. Or they drove a college roommate to a Planned Parenthood or something like that. So they feel like they could never be against a woman's right to choose ever again because then they feel like they would be hypocrites right? Because they've done it before, right? So, but you got to get someone to admit this and talk about this before you can ever send them on a potentially different path. So talk to them about how difficult it was, how scary it was, right? Someone who's had in a crisis pregnancy, I mean, it's shock and full of fear. It's a terrible thing to experience. So talk to them about this experience. If you want this person to change their mind ever, you have to get them back to their where. So here's what I mean. Here's how I visualize this. So you and this other person, you're going like this. See this works? You're going like this, and then at a certain point, something happens. There's a point of trauma, and you split. You're here. Make sure I can fit this on the screen. You're here, and they're here. You're never going to get them to jump from here to where you are. It's never going to happen. You have to first bring them back to the pivot point, their where, bring them back here, meet them there, and then you can bring them to where you are. They're never going to jump from here to here. It doesn't happen. You got to get them back to their where and have them rethink that moment of trauma again and then come to different conclusions. Does that make sense? So the question is, how do I talk to them? If I'm here and they're here, how do I talk to them in a way that they can understand? Jonathan Haidt, in order to get back to the where, the point, the pivot point, Jonathan Haidt came up with this concept of moral foundations. So in short, conservatives and progressives are different. Conservatives' moral foundations are respect, authority, and purity. Progressives have a moral foundation of caring and fairness. So if you're talking to a progressive who is pro-choice or pro-abortion, they believe that that is the caring and fair position to have. In their mind, they are caring and fair. That's what matters. Now, to a conservative, we're about like the authority of the Bible, perhaps, right? Maybe that's why, or the purity of life. They don't think of that. It's about what's caring and fair. So you have to talk to them on your terms. You can scream at them all day about in using your moral foundation, but it won't do anything. They're not listening. They don't hear it. You got to talk to them on their language, right? If you want to win an argument, great. But if you want to change minds, you have to speak in a language that their worldview understands. So if you're talking to someone who's pro-abortion, frame everything as caring. So is it caring to a mother to tell her that we can eliminate this problem when that's an irreversible decision that will probably cause a ton of trauma and regrets for the rest of your life? Is that caring? Is it caring to the baby, who of course has no say in its life? Progressives don't care about the baby though. They care more about the woman, I should say. So you don't have to bring up the baby, take that one back. Say, is it fair that a woman isn't even given a chance to be a great mom? Right? I know women who have walked into crisis pregnancy centers and they're freaking out. And they say, I can't be a mom. I can't be a mom. And they're like, why not? Well, I don't even have a crib. And the pro-life pregnancy centers, they say, well, here's one. Here, take it. What else do you need? These centers give mom a fair chance. So just killing the baby, that's not even fair to the mom without giving her all of her options and without giving her all the chances to succeed. That's not caring, is it? Is it caring to live in a society that thinks of women as merely sex objects to be tossed aside because the man she had sex with doesn't want to be responsible for their child? Is that fair? Is it caring to consider a woman as nothing more than an employee and her happiness depends entirely on her career and how much money she can make, as if a baby is some sort of obstacle to true happiness? Is that caring? Is that fair? Whatever argument you make, if you're trying to change their mind, it needs to be in their language of caring and fairness. Again, if you're trying to win an argument, that's easy, right? You can't murder people, all right? Of course life begins at conception. Follow the science. A fetus is just a name of a different stage of human development, like toddler or teenager. Right? A woman has the right to control her body until she decides to have sex with a man and gets pregnant, and then the rights of the baby trump the woman's right for the next 9 months. Don't have sex unless you're willing to raise a child with the man you're having sex with. I can win every abortion argument. But if you want to change someone's mind, that's a different story. Plant the seeds. Plant the seeds now of pro-life and a pro-life ethic. Talk about caring and fairness. After all, this person you're talking to is alive. You'd think they'd appreciate life.